I sold my company for $50 million and decided to celebrate with my son Michael and his wife Jessica. I booked a table at one of the best restaurants in Austin. We were 2 hours into what felt like a perfect evening. Then I excused myself to use the restroom. Just a few minutes. When I returned, the jazz band had started playing something slow and romantic. Michael and Jessica were on the dance floor, swaying together, his hand on the small of her back. I was watching them, feeling something close to peace, when I felt a hand on my shoulder. A security guard leaned close and whispered, "Ma'am, I saw something while you were gone." The blonde woman, "She poured something into your drink. I'm not supposed to interfere, but I thought you should know." I looked down at the glass sitting on the white tablecloth, pulp clinging to the sides, ice half melted. My stomach dropped. What did she put in there? Was this real? Was Jessica, the woman who called me Mama T, who baked me cookies at Christmas, who'd hugged me just an hour ago, actually trying to poison me? Or was this security guard mistaken? Maybe he was wrong. Maybe she was just moving my glass. Maybe I was losing my mind, but every instinct I'd honed in 20 years of cutthroat business screamed one word: danger. I didn't confront them, didn't make a scene. I just stood up, grabbed my purse, and walked out through the kitchen exit. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in my car in a parking garage, hands shaking, phone buzzing with texts from Jessica asking where I'd gone. And I knew my son's wife had poisoned my drink while I was in the bathroom. My name is Teresa Ronald. I'm 58 years old. And what I'm about to tell you is the story of how my own son tried to murder me for money, and how I made sure he paid for it. And I spent the last 20 years of my life building a tech company from a spare bedroom in my Austin duplex into a $50 million empire. But that success cost me everything. My husband Richard left when Michael was 12, walked out on a Tuesday morning while I was on a conference call with investors in Silicon Valley. He stood in the doorway of my home office, suitcase in hand, and said, "I'm tired of being married to a ghost, Teresa." I nodded, muted the call for exactly 10 seconds, and said, "I understand. We'll talk tonight." But there was no tonight. He was gone before I finished my pitch deck. I told myself it was for the best, that Michael and I would be fine, that providing for him financially was the same as being present. I was wrong. I missed Michael's high school graduation because of a board meeting in San Francisco, missed his championship baseball game because of a product launch in New York, missed his 21st birthday because of an acquisition negotiation that fell through anyway. Every missed moment I justified, every absence I rationalized. I was building something, creating generational wealth, securing his future. What I didn't realize was that I was erasing his present. By the time Michael was in his 20s, we were strangers who shared a last name. He'd call on holidays, send obligatory texts. But the warmth was gone. The little boy who used to climb into my lap and ask me to read him stories about dragons and knights, that boy had disappeared, and I didn't even notice when it happened. I had employees, investors, clients who respected me, board members who feared me. But I had no friends. No real ones anyway, just business relationships dressed up as friendships. Dinners where we talked about market trends and stock options, never about heartbreak or loneliness or the crushing weight of realizing you've spent 2 decades climbing a ladder that's leaning against the wrong wall. Then, 3 months ago, the acquisition closed. $50 million. Wire transfer confirmed at 3:47 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon. I sat in my lawyer's office, staring at the number on the screen, and felt nothing. No joy, no relief, just emptiness. That night, alone in my Westlake Hills house, 4 bedrooms, all empty except mine, I realized something. I'd won the game, but I'd lost everything that mattered, so I called Michael. He answered on the 4th ring, his voice cautious. "Mom, everything okay?" "I want to see you," I said. My voice cracked and I hated myself for it. "The sale went through. I want to celebrate. With you. With Jessica. Can we have dinner? Just the 3 of us?" There was a long pause. I could hear Jessica in the background asking who it was. "Okay," Michael said finally. "Yeah, we can do that. Saturday night, 7 o'clock, I'll make a reservation somewhere nice." "Sure, Mom, that sounds good." We hung up, and I cried for the first time in years. Saturday came. I booked a table at the finest restaurant in town, the kind of place where a single entree costs what I used to make in a week back in my 20s, when I was coding websites in my apartment and eating ramen for every meal. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings. A live jazz quartet played in the corner. White-gloved servers moved like ghosts between tables draped in cream-colored linens. Michael arrived first, looking handsome in a navy blazer. Jessica came in a moment later, wearing a white dress that made her look angelic. She hugged me tight, her perfume, Chanel No. 5, filling my lungs. "Mama T!" she squealed. "You look amazing." I'd met Jessica 3 years ago at Michael's birthday party. She was radiant, successful, a pharmaceutical sales rep with a degree from SMU and a smile that could light up a room. She called me Mama T from the first day, and I loved her for it. Finally, I thought. Finally, I have a daughter. We sat down, ordered the chef's tasting menu, 7 courses, wine pairings. I told stories about the early days of the company, back when failure seemed more likely than success. Michael laughed, really laughed, at the story about the time our server crashed during a demo for a major client and I had to stall for 45 minutes by doing card tricks I'd learned as a kid. "I didn't know you knew magic," Michael said, grinning. "There's a lot you don't know about me," I said softly, "but I'd like to change that." For 2 hours it felt like we were a real family, not a broken one held together by obligation and guilt, a real one, the kind I'd always wanted but never made time to build. Then the jazz band started playing something slow and romantic. Jessica tugged at Michael's sleeve, her eyes sparkling. "Come on, baby," she said. "Dance with me." Michael smiled, that same crooked smile from when he was 5 years old and I'd spin him around the living room to oldies on the radio, and they walked to the small dance floor by the pianist. I watched them sway together, Michael's hand on the small of her back, Jessica's head on his shoulder, and I felt something I hadn't felt in decades, peace. That's when I felt the hand on my shoulder. I turned. A security guard stood beside me, older gentleman, maybe 60, with gray hair and kind, worried eyes. "Ma'am," he whispered, leaning close so only I could hear. "I saw something. The blonde woman who was sitting here. She poured something into your glass. The orange juice. I'm not supposed to interfere, but I thought you should know." My stomach dropped. I looked at the glass sitting in front of my empty seat. Orange juice. Pulp clinging to the sides, ice cubes half melted, condensation running down the exterior like tears. And suddenly every instinct I'd honed in 20 years of business, every boardroom betrayal, every hostile negotiation, every moment someone smiled to my face while plotting behind my back, screamed one word, "Danger!" My hands started shaking. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it over the jazz music. I looked at the dance floor. Michael and Jessica were still swaying, lost in their own world. She whispered something in his ear. He laughed. They didn't know I knew. I didn't confront them, didn't make a scene, didn't scream or cry or demand answers. I just stood up, grabbed my purse, and walked toward the kitchen exit. Past the servers carrying trays of food, past the sommelier decanting wine, past the other diners laughing and clinking glasses and living their normal, unpoisoned lives. The cold April air hit me like a slap when I stepped outside. I stood under the restaurant's neon sign, my breath coming in short gasps, and turned to look through the window. Michael and Jessica were walking back to the table. Jessica picked up my glass, my poisoned glass, and tilted her head, looking around, searching for me. Then she leaned close to Michael and whispered something in his ear, and they both laughed. Have you ever had a moment where your entire reality just shattered? 1 second you're fine, the next you're questioning everything you thought you knew? Tell me in the comments. Because standing on that sidewalk, watching my son and his wife laugh, while a glass of poison sat on the table where I should have been sitting, I felt like I was losing my mind. Maybe I was. Or maybe I was the only sane person left. If you're already feeling what I felt that night, the confusion, the betrayal, the fear that makes your hands shake and your chest tighten and your world tilt sideways, please subscribe. Because what I did next changed everything. I didn't go home that night. I went hunting. I sat in my car in the parking garage for 20 minutes. The engine was off. The silence was deafening. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat, Michael calling. I stared at his name on the screen, watched it ring and ring until it went to voicemail. Then it buzzed again. A text from Jessica. "Teresa, where did you go? Are you okay? We're worried about you. Worried about me. The woman who just tried to poison me was worried about me." I turned my phone face down and pressed my forehead against the steering wheel. My hands were still shaking. I couldn't make them stop. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that glass. that innocent-looking glass of orange juice with death dissolved inside it. I couldn't go home, couldn't face my empty house in Westlake Hills with its 4 bedrooms and cathedral ceilings and the crushing silence that lived in every corner. I couldn't sit alone with these thoughts, with this terror, with the knowledge that someone I loved had just tried to end my life. So I drove. No destination in mind at first, just drove through the empty Austin streets, past bars spilling light and laughter onto sidewalks, past homeless encampments under overpasses, past all the life I'd been too busy to notice for 20 years. Then I knew exactly where I needed to go. I pulled over and dialed a number I hadn't called in months. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered, thick with sleep. "This better be good." I took a shaky breath. "David, I need you." Now. There was a pause. Then his voice changed, alert and sharp. "Where are you?" "6th Street, near the bridge. Come to my office. I'll meet you there in 20 minutes. David Martinez ran a private security firm called Sentinel Strategies. We'd met 10 years ago during the darkest period of my company's history. A competitor had planted a mole in my engineering department. Someone stealing source code, sabotaging product launches, feeding confidential information to our biggest rival. I was weeks away from bankruptcy. David's team caught them, exposed the whole operation, saved my company, saved my life, really. We'd been friends ever since, the kind of friendship forged in crisis and tempered by mutual respect. His office was in a nondescript building in downtown Austin, wedged between a craft brewery and a startup incubator. I parked in the alley and climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. The hallway smelled like old carpet and ambition. David was waiting at his office door, still in sweatpants and a University of Texas t-shirt, his gray hair sticking up in the back. He took one look at my face and stepped aside. "Come in." His office smelled like coffee and old leather. Security monitors lined one wall displaying feeds from various client locations, parking garages, warehouse entrances, executive offices. His desk was covered in case files and empty energy drink cans. He cleared a chair for me, then sat on the edge of his desk, arms crossed. "Teresa," he said quietly, "what happened?" I told him everything. The celebration dinner, the perfect evening. Michael and Jessica dancing while I sat alone at the table. The security guard's warning, the glass of orange juice. My voice was steady at first, clinical even, like I was presenting a business case to investors. But halfway through it cracked. David didn't interrupt, just listened, his expression shifting from concern to something harder. Anger, maybe, or fear. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, "Do you still have the drink?" I reached into my purse and pulled out a small perfume bottle, the kind you use for travel, crystal glass with a gold cap. Before I left the restaurant, while Jessica and Michael were still dancing, I'd done something I still can't fully explain. Some instinct, some paranoia honed from 20 years of corporate warfare, made me pour about 2 ounces of that juice into this bottle. Corporate paranoia paying off in the worst possible way. David held the bottle up to the light, examining it. "Smart," he said. "Paranoid, but smart." He set it down carefully on his desk like it was a live grenade. "Teresa, I need to test this. If someone tampered with your drink, there'll be residue. Compounds that don't belong. Chemical signatures." He paused, his dark eyes meeting mine. "But if I find something, if this confirms what that guard told you, we're talking about attempted murder. You understand that?" I nodded. "I understand." My voice sounded distant, like it was coming from someone else's body. "How long will it take?" David checked his watch. "I have a contact at a private lab. Does work for law enforcement, corporate clients, keeps things discreet. I can have results by morning." He stood, grabbed his phone. "I'm calling him now. You should stay here. There's a guest room down the hall. Try to get some rest." Rest. The word felt absurd. He sent the sample to the lab. A courier picked it up within the hour and showed me to a small room with a futon and a window overlooking the alley. I lay down fully clothed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of downtown Austin at night. Sirens, laughter, the distant thrum of live music, and I replayed every interaction with Jessica, every smile, every hug, every time she'd called me Mama T. I met Jessica 3 years ago at Michael's 30th birthday party. I'd flown in from San Francisco, made it just in time for cake. She was radiant in a red dress, her blonde hair in perfect waves, her laugh infectious. Michael introduced us, and she'd hugged me immediately. "Mrs. Ronald, I've heard so much about you. Michael says you're basically a genius." I'd laughed, embarrassed and pleased. Call me Teresa. Please. Can I call you Mama T? She'd asked, her blue eyes sparkling. Michael says you hate being called Mom, but I've always wanted a mom like you. Strong, successful, independent. I'd felt something crack open in my chest, a wound I didn't know I was carrying. Mama T is perfect, I'd whispered. She baked me cookies last Christmas, snickerdoodles, my favorite, brought them to my house in a tin decorated with snowflakes. We'd sat in my kitchen, drinking coffee, talking about her pharmaceutical sales job, about Michael's promotion, about their plans to buy a house. She'd seemed so genuine, so warm, so much like the daughter I never had. Had it all been a lie? Had she been planning this even then, or was I losing my mind? Maybe the security guard was wrong, maybe it was all a misunderstanding, but I knew, deep in my gut, beneath the denial and the desperate hope, I knew. You don't survive 20 years in the tech industry without developing instincts for danger, and every instinct I had was screaming that Jessica Thomas had tried to kill me. The question that haunted me through that sleepless night wasn't whether she'd done it, it was whether Michael knew. David's call came at 6:15 in the morning. I answered before the second ring, my heart already racing. Teresa, he said, and I could hear it in his voice before he said another word. Bad news. The kind of bad news that changes everything. It's digitalis, cardiac glycoside, highly concentrated, pharmaceutical grade. He paused. I heard him take a breath, the amount in that sample. Teresa, if you'd drunk the full glass, you'd have been dead within 2 hours. Cardiac arrest. They would have called it a heart attack. Natural causes. I didn't cry at first, just sat there on the edge of the futon, phone pressed to my ear, watching the sun rise over downtown Austin through the dirty window, pink and orange lights spilling across the skyline. A new day, a day I almost didn't live to see. Then it hit me like a physical blow. My son's wife, the woman who'd baked me cookies, who'd called me Mama T, who'd hugged me tight and told me she loved me, had tried to murder me. Had planned it, had obtained a deadly poison, had poured it into my drink while my son distracted me with memories and laughter. The sobs came then, violent and ugly. I doubled over, arms wrapped around my stomach, and cried like I hadn't cried since the day Richard left. Cried for the daughter I thought I'd found, cried for the family I'd lost, cried for the son who probably knew what his wife had done. David stayed on the line, didn't try to comfort me with empty words, just stayed, let me break, let me shatter. And when I finally stopped, when the sobs turned to shaky breaths, he asked the question I'd been dreading all night. Teresa, do you think Michael knew? I wiped my face with the back of my hand, stared at my reflection in the dark phone screen, saw a stranger looking back. I don't know, I whispered. David was quiet for a long moment. Then, in my experience, these things are rarely solo operations. And there it was, the truth I'd been running from all night. Michael knew. My son knew his wife was trying to kill me, and he'd let it happen. If someone told you that your own child was involved in a plot to kill you, would you believe them immediately, or would you find every excuse not to? Because I spent that entire night convincing myself Michael didn't know. That it was all Jessica. That my boy, my little boy who used to climb into my lap and ask me to read him stories, couldn't do this to me. Was I in denial? Tell me honestly. Because I need to know if I'm the only mother who would rather believe in impossible innocence than face unbearable truth. If you want to see what a mother does when she realizes her child might want her dead, hit that like button. Because I stopped being a victim right then, sitting in that guest room with the sun rising and the truth settling into my bones like poison. I became something else, something harder, something capable of hunting the people who wanted me dead. Even if one of them was my son. I stood up, washed my face in David's bathroom sink, looked at myself in the mirror, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to the police. Not yet. Not until I knew everything. Not until I had proof that would destroy them both. I was going to investigate my own son, and if I found what I suspected I'd find, I was going to make sure they paid for it. Not with my death, with theirs. I went home as the sun climbed over the Austin skyline, showered until the water ran cold, put on my black Armani suit, the one I wore to hostile takeover meetings, to boardroom battles, to negotiations where weakness meant death. If I was going to investigate my own son, I'd do it like I did everything else, thoroughly, methodically, without mercy. I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, fixing my collar, and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked like me, but her eyes were different. colder, harder, like something essential had burned away overnight. I made coffee, strong and black, sat at my kitchen island with my laptop and a notepad, and I started making calls. The first one was to Carolyn Way. We'd met at UT Austin in the 90s, back when computer science was still a boys' club, and women like us had to be twice as smart and 3 times as tough to even get a seat at the table. Same dorm, same major, same midnight coding sessions fueled by pizza and spite. She'd gone into finance, climbed her way up to VP at Wells Fargo. We hadn't spoken in 6 months, but some friendships are built on foundations strong enough to survive neglect. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Teresa? It's 7 in the morning on a Sunday. Someone better be dead." Her voice was rough with sleep, but I could hear the smile in it. That smile died when I spoke. "Carolyn, I need access to Michael's accounts, all of them. And I need you not to ask why." The line went silent for so long I thought she'd hung up. "Then, Jesus, Teresa, what you're asking me to do? That could cost me my career, my freedom, bank fraud, violation of privacy laws. I could go to prison." I gripped the phone tighter. "I know what I'm asking, and I wouldn't ask if it weren't life or death." "Are you sure?" I didn't hesitate. "I'm sure." Another long silence. Then I heard her sigh, the sound of a woman crossing a line she could never uncross. "Give me until noon." She hung up. I sat there staring at my phone, knowing I'd just made her an accomplice to something that could destroy us both. But I couldn't stop, wouldn't stop, because somewhere in Michael's financial records was the truth, and I needed that truth more than I needed air. By noon, a courier delivered a manila envelope to my house. No return address, no signature required. Inside, printouts of every transaction Michael had made in the last year. Checking accounts, savings accounts, credit cards, even a Venmo history. And one account I didn't recognize. A joint account opened at a Chase branch in Round Rock, 30 minutes north of Austin, far enough that they wouldn't run into anyone they knew. Account holders, Jessica L. Thomas and Michael R. Ronald, opened 8 months ago. Current balance, $487,000. I spread the documents across my kitchen island, got out a yellow highlighter and started reading. March 15th, wire transfer, $50,000. Memo, future planning. April 2nd, $75,000. Memo, investment opportunity. April 20th, 2 days after I'd announced the company sale to Michael over lunch, 2 days after I'd told him my $50 million empire was finally sold, $120,000. Memo, finalization. I sat back, stared at that word, finalization, like my death was just another business transaction, another milestone in their project plan. The first deposit was made exactly 1 week after I told Michael about the acquisition offer. 8 months of planning, 8 months of funneling money into an account I was never supposed to see. 8 months of preparing for a future where I didn't exist. I traced the timeline with my finger, connecting dots like I used to connect data points in market analyses. Every deposit corresponded with something. A holiday, a family dinner, a phone call where I'd mentioned the sale progress. They'd been building their war chest while I'd been trying to rebuild our relationship. One transaction stopped me cold. May 12th, Mother's Day. I remembered that day with painful clarity. I'd gone to a boutique stationery store in downtown Austin and spent an hour choosing the perfect card. Cream-colored, embossed flowers. I'd written in it by hand, something I never did because my handwriting was terrible. "Michael, I know I wasn't the mother you deserved. I missed too many moments, made too many wrong choices. But I love you more than anything in this world. Let's make new memories. Let's start over. Love, Mom." I'd mailed it with a lump in my throat and hope in my chest. That same day, the same exact day, Michael transferred $50,000 into the Jessica Thomas account. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you die for, share this story, because I was about to do something I never thought I was capable of, and I need you to understand why. I need you to know that what I did next wasn't about revenge. It was about survival. It was about refusing to let my son's greed erase my existence. I kept digging. Found Venmo payments to people I didn't know. PayPal transfers with vague descriptions. Zelle payments marked MISC. But one caught my eye, $15,000 to someone named D. Kovac. I opened my laptop and Googled the name. Dmitry Kovac, 43 years old, last known address in Pflugerville, And a news article from 2019, local chemist loses license after illegal synthesis charges. I clicked the article, read about how Kovac had been caught manufacturing controlled substances in his home lab, lost his pharmacy license, served 18 months in county jail, released on probation 2 years ago. I sat back in my chair and felt something cold settle in my chest. This wasn't impulsive, this wasn't a crime of passion. This was methodical, calculated, professional. They'd been planning my murder the way I used to plan product launches. Milestones, timelines, resources, budget allocation, risk assessment. They'd hired a chemist, paid him in cash, created a separate account to hide the money trail. And they'd done it all while smiling to my face, hugging me, calling me Mama T. Then I found something else buried in the documents. A life insurance policy I didn't remember signing, taken out 6 months ago through an online broker. Beneficiary Michael Ronald, payout $5 million. I stared at my signature at the bottom of the application. It looked right. The loops and curves matched, but I had no memory of signing it. I pulled up my calendar from 6 months ago. Nothing. No appointment with an insurance agent. No emails about policies. Someone had forged it. Probably scanned an old signature from some document I'd actually signed and pasted it onto the application. Digital forgery. Clean. Almost untraceable. I printed everything, every bank statement, every transaction record, every Venmo payment, organized it all chronologically in a 3-ring binder like I was building a case file, because that's what I'd become. Not a mother anymore, not a victim. A woman hunting the people who wanted her dead. A detective investigating her own son's plot to murder her. I worked through the afternoon, through dinner, into the night, building my evidence, connecting every dot, creating a timeline that proved premeditation, that proved conspiracy, that proved my son and his wife had spent 8 months and nearly $500,000 planning to kill me. I could have gone to the police right then, walked into Austin PD with my binder of evidence and let them handle it. But I didn't, because I needed to know something the evidence couldn't tell me. Was Michael the mastermind? Or was he Jessica's puppet? Was my son a killer or just a weak man led astray by a beautiful woman? And either way, whether he'd planned it or just gone along with it, I needed to hear him admit it. Needed to look him in the eyes while he confessed. Needed him to know that I knew, that I'd figured it out, that his mother wasn't the fool he thought she was. Here's what I need to know. If you discovered your own child was planning to kill you, not in a moment of rage but methodically over months, could you ever forgive them? Could you ever look at them the same way? I want to hear your response in the comment. The night before the meeting, I couldn't sleep. I walked through my house at 3 a.m, touching walls, remembering. This was the house I'd bought with my first big contract, the house where Michael took his first steps, right there in the living room, 11 months old, wobbling toward me with his arms out and that huge gummy smile. The house where I'd celebrated every company milestone, every funding round, every product launch. When did this home become a crime scene? When did my son become a suspect? When did the kitchen where I used to make him birthday cakes become the place where I'd catch him trying to kill me? Part of me felt monstrous. What kind of mother sets a trap for her child? What kind of woman uses her own murder as bait? But then I'd remember the digitalis, the bank accounts, the forged life insurance policy, the Mother's Day transaction. And I'd remind myself, I'm not the monster here. I'm the prey who learned to hunt. I'm the victim who refused to die quietly. I'm a mother whose love wasn't enough to keep her son from becoming a killer. Have you ever had to choose between protecting yourself and protecting someone you love? Have you ever been in a situation where doing the right thing meant hurting the person who hurt you first? Tell me in the comments, because standing in that house at 3 a.m, I felt like I was choosing between survival and motherhood. And I didn't know if I could live with either choice. The morning of the trap, I woke up at 5 a.m. Marcus and his team arrived at 6. We did final checks, camera feeds, audio levels, medical team in position, plainclothes officers disguised as catering staff. Everything was ready. I put on the cream cashmere sweater Michael had given me for Christmas 3 years ago, pearl earrings, minimal makeup. I looked at myself in the mirror one last time. The woman staring back looked soft, vulnerable, maternal, perfect. If you think I deserve justice, if you understand why I had to do this, leave a comment. Say anything, because I needed to know I wasn't alone. I needed to know someone out there would understand why a mother would set a trap for her son. Why survival sometimes means becoming someone you never thought you'd be. Your words matter to me. They mattered then, and they matter now. And underneath that carefully constructed costume was something harder than diamonds, something unbreakable. I was ready to catch my son, ready to watch him try to kill me again, ready to become the kind of mother who destroys her child to save herself. Because that's what survival looks like sometimes. Not pretty, not noble, just necessary. I called Michael on a Tuesday morning, rehearsed what I'd say a dozen times beforehand, practiced the tone, the pauses, the vulnerability. When he answered, I used the voice I hadn't used in months, soft, warm, almost fragile, the voice of a mother who didn't know her son was trying to kill her. Michael, sweetheart, it's Mom. I've been doing a lot of thinking since our dinner at the restaurant. I let the sentence hang there, heavy with unspoken emotion. I know I haven't been the mother you deserved. I know I failed you in so many ways, but I want to change that. I want to make things right. I paused for effect, let my voice waver slightly. Could you and Jessica come to the house this Saturday? I have something important to discuss, something about your future. There was a pause on the other end. I could hear Jessica in the background asking, "Who is it?" Her voice bright and curious. Michael's voice when he spoke was cautious, uncertain. "Mom, what's this about?" I let my voice crack a little, imagined the tears I wasn't actually crying. "I'm getting older, honey. The sale made me realize I don't want to die with regrets. I want to set up a trust for you and Jessica. Make sure you're taken care of no matter what happens to me. Can you come, please?" I added that last word like a prayer, like I was begging. Another pause. Longer this time. I could hear muffled conversation, Michael's hand over the phone, Jessica's voice asking questions I couldn't make out. Then he came back on the line. "Okay, Mom, we'll be there. Saturday at 2?" I smiled even though he couldn't see me, even though the smile felt like a knife cutting my face open from the inside. "Perfect, sweetheart. That's perfect. I love you, Michael." He hesitated, just a heartbeat, then quietly, "Love you too, Mom." The line went dead. I sat there holding the phone, staring at his name on the screen, and wondered if those were the last words of love we'd ever exchange. Saturday morning I woke up at 5 a.m. Hadn't really slept. Just lay there staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios, preparing for every possible outcome. Marcus and his team arrived at 6, 3 plainclothes officers, a medical team on standby in an unmarked van 2 blocks away, a forensic specialist to monitor the UV cameras. We did a final sweep, checked every camera feed, tested audio levels, made sure the champagne glasses were properly treated with the reactive dye, made sure the fake trust documents were perfect down to the watermark. Everything had to be flawless. One mistake and they'd walk, one error and I'd be dead. I dressed carefully, stood in my closet for 20 minutes choosing the perfect outfit, finally settled on a cream-colored cashmere sweater, the one Michael had bought me 3 Christmases ago. I remembered opening it, how soft it felt, how he'd said, "I thought it matched your eyes." Pearl earrings that had been my mother's. Minimal makeup. I wanted to look like a mother, not a CEO. Vulnerable, trustworthy, maternal, the kind of woman they wouldn't hesitate to poison. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked fragile, breakable, perfect. I set out champagne glasses on the dining room table at 1:30. Dom Perignon, $500 a bottle, chilling in a silver ice bucket. Each glass had been treated with the UV dye by Marcus's forensics team, invisible to the naked eye. But if Jessica or Michael touched my glass, their fingerprints would glow blue under black light. Physical proof, irrefutable. The dining room looked perfect, professional, documents stacked neatly, expensive pens, fresh flowers in a crystal vase, everything designed to look like a real estate planning meeting, everything designed to make them feel safe. The doorbell rang at exactly 2 p.m. I took a breath, put on my mask, opened the door. Michael stood there in a navy blazer and khakis. Jessica wore a white sundress that made her look angelic, innocent. She was carrying flowers, pink roses, my favorite. "Teresa," she squealed practically, launching herself at me, hugged me tight. Her perfume, Chanel No. 5, same as always, filled my nostrils and made my stomach turn. But I hugged her back, kissed her cheek, felt the softness of her skin and wanted to scream. "Jessica, darling, you look absolutely beautiful." Michael hugged me next. I held him longer than necessary, memorized the feeling, the weight of his arms around me, the smell of his cologne, because part of me knew this might be the last time I ever hold my son. We sat in the living room. I'd prepared appetizers, brie and crackers, grapes, chocolate-covered strawberries. Played the perfect hostess. "How have you two been? Tell me everything." Jessica launched into a story about their recent trip to Cabo, the beaches, the food, the tequila tasting. She was animated, hands gesturing, face glowing. Michael was quieter, watching me. His eyes kept flicking to my face like he was trying to read something there. I wondered if he sensed something, if some part of him, the part that used to be my little boy, still knew his mother well enough to detect the lie underneath the smile. At 2:30 the doorbell rang again. Right on schedule, I stood. That must be Richard, my attorney. I opened the door to find Marcus Holt standing there in a gray suit, glasses perched on his nose, carrying a leather briefcase. He looked every inch the estate planning lawyer. Nothing like the Texas Ranger who'd helped me rig my house with surveillance equipment. I smiled. "Richard, thank you for coming. Please come in." I turned to Michael and Jessica. "This is Richard Brennan, my estate attorney." "Richard, this is my son Michael and his wife Jessica." Marcus shook their hands, his expression professionally bland. "Pleasure to meet you both. Teresa speaks very highly of you. We moved to the dining room. I'd set it up like a business meeting. Documents, pens, legal pads. Champagne on ice." "Before we begin," I said, reaching for the bottle, "let's have a toast. To family, to new beginnings." I poured the champagne carefully, made sure to pour theirs first, made sure mine was the last glass filled, made sure Jessica could see exactly which glass was mine. We raised our glasses. "To family," Jessica said, smiling at me with those perfect white teeth. "To family," Michael echoed, his voice softer. We drank. The champagne tasted like ash in my mouth, like drinking my own funeral. Marcus opened his briefcase with practiced precision, pulled out the fake documents. "Teresa has established the Teresa Ronald Family Trust," he began, his voice dry and lawyerly, exactly how a real estate attorney would sound. "The trust contains $10 million in liquid assets, stocks, bonds, and cash equivalents. She's naming you, Michael, and your wife Jessica as co-beneficiaries with immediate access." I watched their faces, watched Jessica's eyes widen, watched Michael lean forward. "Immediate access?" he asked. Marcus nodded. "Upon signing these documents today, you'll have full control of the accounts. Teresa is essentially gifting you this money now, rather than including it in her will." Jessica grabbed Michael's hand, squeezed it. Her face was flushed with excitement. "Baby, this is incredible." She turned to me. "Teresa, I don't know what to say." She stood, came around the table, hugged me again. Tighter this time. "You're so generous, so loving. We don't deserve this." I patted her back, felt the wire of her bra through the thin sundress, felt the warmth of her skin, felt her heart beating against my chest. "Your family," I said, my voice thick with manufactured emotion. "This is what family does. We take care of each other." We spent the next 20 minutes reviewing the fake documents. Marcus explained terms, conditions, tax implications, all theatrical, all designed to look legitimate. Michael asked smart questions about capital gains and distribution schedules. Jessica nodded along, occasionally asking something that made her sound engaged but not too knowledgeable. They both signed on every dotted line, their signatures captured by hidden cameras, their voices recorded by hidden microphones, every word, every gesture, every lie building the case that would destroy them. After the signing, I stood. "This calls for more champagne," I said, reaching for the bottle. I refilled their glasses generously, then mine. As I poured, I made sure to turn slightly away, giving Jessica a clear view of my glass sitting on the table. Made it easy for her. Then I set the bottle down. "I need to grab something from the kitchen. The notary seal for the documents." "Richard, keep them entertained." Marcus nodded. Launched into a story about a client who'd forgotten to notarize documents and caused a 6-month legal nightmare. I walked into the kitchen. Didn't grab anything. Just stood there, just out of sight, watching the live feed on my phone. The camera hidden in the chandelier above the dining room table showed everything in perfect clarity. Marcus talking, Michael listening, Jessica nodding, and my champagne glass sitting there, waiting. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. Marcus kept talking, kept Michael distracted with questions about their investment plans, about whether they'd considered real estate, about market volatility. And then it happened. Jessica stood up, smoothed her white sundress. "I need to use the restroom," she said sweetly. That same sweet voice she'd used 100 times before. Marcus directed her without missing a beat. Down the hall, second door on the left. She smiled, thanked him, and as she passed the dining room table she paused, just for a second, picked up my champagne glass, held it like it was nothing, like it was just a glass she was moving out of the way, and walked toward the bathroom. Marcus had a body camera hidden in his tie clip. He gave a subtle signal, adjusting his glasses, and Officer Leonard, posing as a catering assistant in the kitchen with me, slipped out. Followed Jessica at a distance. The camera caught everything, every single second. Jessica walked into the bathroom, locked the door, set my glass on the marble counter, pulled a small glass vial from her bra, clear liquid, no label, maybe half an ounce. She unscrewed the champagne flute, poured the entire contents of the vial into my drink, swirled it gently to mix. Then she stared at herself in the mirror, fixed her hair, reapplied her lipstick, and smiled. Actually smiled, like she was proud of herself, like she'd just accomplished something worthy of celebration. Then she walked back out, my poisoned glass in hand, back down the hallway, back to the dining room where my son sat talking to a Texas Ranger about stock portfolios. She set the glass down in front of my empty chair, sat back down, crossed her legs, and waited for me to return so she could watch me die. Have you ever watched someone you loved betray you in real time? Not heard about it later, not found evidence of it, but actually watched it happen, second by second, knowing there's nothing you can do to stop it? How did you keep breathing? Because standing in that kitchen, watching that video feed, seeing her pour poison into my drink for the second time, with my son sitting 20 feet away, probably knowing exactly what she was doing, I felt something break inside me, something fundamental, the part of me that believed in family, in love, in the basic goodness of people. It shattered like glass. Tell me your stories. I need to know I'm not the only one who's felt this. I need to know I'm not alone in this particular kind of hell. I watched her walk back into that dining room, watched her set my poisoned glass down, watched her smile at Michael. And I realized, this was it. This was the moment I'd catch her, the moment I'd prove it. The moment everything changed forever. If your heart is pounding right now, if you can feel what I felt watching her walk back with that glass, watching her sit there waiting to watch me die, subscribe. Because what happens next is the moment I've been waiting for. The moment justice stopped being an abstract concept and became something real, something I could touch, something I could control. She walked back into the dining room like nothing had happened, like she'd just freshened up her makeup instead of pouring poison into my drink, set my champagne glass down in front of me with a gentle clink against the wood, smiled that bright, warm smile I'd fallen for 3 years ago. Sorry, that took a minute. Your bathroom is gorgeous, by the way. I love the marble countertops. Where did you source that stone? I looked at the glass, looked at her, saw the innocence painted on her face like a mask, and forced myself to smile back. Thank you, sweetheart. Italy, I had it imported during the renovation. Marcus was still talking to Michael about investment strategies. Michael was nodding along, but his attention had shifted. He was watching me, watching Jessica, watching the glass. I picked it up, let my fingers curl around the stem, raised it slowly to my lips. Jessica watched. Her eyes tracked the movement like a hawk watching prey. Michael watched, his expression unreadable. Marcus watched while pretending not to. And in that split second before the glass touched my mouth, I saw it, a flash of something in Jessica's eyes. Anticipation, excitement, maybe even hunger. She wanted to watch me drink it, wanted to see the moment the poison entered my system, wanted to witness the beginning of my end. But I didn't drink. Instead, I paused, let the glass hover just below my lips, wrinkled my nose slightly. You know what? I'm feeling a bit lightheaded, too much champagne on an empty stomach. I set the glass down carefully. Let me grab some water first. Jessica's smile flickered, just for a second, a micro-expression of disappointment, of frustration. Then it was back, bright and perfect. Oh, of course, can I get it for you? She started to stand. No, I said quickly. You sit, enjoy. I'll just be a moment. But I didn't move toward the kitchen. Instead, I looked at Marcus, nodded once, a tiny movement that meant everything. His hand went to his jacket pocket. And just like that, everything changed. Marcus stood up. The movement was sudden enough to make Michael and Jessica both turn. Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out a leather badge wallet, flipped it open. The silver star of a Texas Ranger caught the light from the chandelier. "Jessica Thomas, Michael Ronald," he said, his voice no longer dry and lawyerly but hard as iron. "I'm Ranger Marcus Holt with the Texas Rangers. You're both under arrest." The room exploded. Jessica's face went white, not pale but bloodless, like someone had drained every drop of color from her skin. Michael shot to his feet so fast his chair tipped backward and crashed to the floor. "What? What the hell is happening?" Plainclothes officers emerged from everywhere. Officer Leonard from the kitchen, Rodriguez from the hallway where he'd been posing as security, Kim from the living room where she'd pretended to arrange flowers, 5 of them in total, all with badges out, all with hands on their weapons. "Hands where we can see them," officers commanded. "Now." Jessica screamed. A high, sharp sound like an animal caught in a trap. "This is insane! Teresa, what is this? What are you doing?" She looked at me, and I saw genuine fear in her eyes. Terror, confusion, the mask finally cracking. Good. I wanted her to feel what I felt, wanted her to experience that moment when your reality shatters and you realize the person you trusted has been hunting you all along. Michael was staring at me like I was a stranger, like he'd never seen me before in his life. Mom, what's going on? What is this?" His voice cracked on the last word, and for a moment, just a moment, I almost broke, almost called it off, almost told Marcus to stop, because he sounded like a little boy, lost and scared and needing his mother. But then I stood up, pushed my chair back, walked slowly to the head of the table, placed my hands on the polished wood, and looked my son directly in the eyes. And said the words I'd rehearsed 100 times in front of my bathroom mirror. "Michael, 3 weeks ago, your wife tried to poison me at the restaurant downtown. A security guard saw her pour something into my drink. Tonight," I gestured to the champagne glass sitting in front of my empty chair. She did it again. "And you..." I paused, let my voice shake, let him see the pain I'd been carrying. "You helped her plan it." "That's insane," Michael shouted, his face flushed red. "I would never, Mom, I would never hurt you. This is crazy. You're crazy." But even as the words left his mouth, his eyes darted to Jessica. A quick glance, barely a second. But I saw it. Everyone saw it. And in that look, I saw the truth. He knew. Maybe he didn't pour the poison himself. Maybe he convinced himself it was all Jessica's idea. Maybe he told himself he was just going along with it, not really responsible. But he knew. He'd always known. Marcus opened his briefcase. The one that had held fake trust documents 20 minutes ago now revealed something else. Bank records, printed evidence, a tablet computer. He pulled out the papers first, spread them on the table like a dealer spreading cards. "The joint account in Jessica Thomas's maiden name," Marcus said, his voice calm and clinical. $487,000 funneled over 8 months. "Including this," he pointed to a highlighted line. "A payment of $15,000 to Dmitry Kovac, a chemist who lost his license in 2019 for synthesizing controlled substances. And this," he held up another document, "a forged life insurance policy naming Michael as the sole beneficiary. $5 million payout." Jessica collapsed into her chair like someone had cut her strings, started crying, real tears this time, not the crocodile tears she'd used before, mascara running down her cheeks in black rivers. I was just... She looked at Michael desperately. "Baby, tell them it wasn't supposed to happen like this." And there it was. The confession. Not explicit, not a full admission, but enough. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Meaning there was a plan. Meaning things had gone wrong. Meaning she'd intended for something else to happen. Marcus picked up the tablet, turned it toward them, pressed play. The bathroom footage filled the screen, crystal clear, high definition, Jessica entering, locking the door, pulling the vial from her bra, pouring it into my champagne, mixing it, smiling at herself in the mirror. The timestamp in the corner read 2:47 p.m., 23 minutes ago. "Your wife," Marcus said quietly, pouring digitalis into Teresa's champagne. captured by a body camera, witnessed by Officer Leonard, recorded from 3 different angles. Michael turned to me. His face was ashen, gray, like he'd aged 10 years in 10 seconds. "Mom, I can explain. It's not what you think. But I held up a hand. Cut him off. Don't insult me by lying now. You've been lying for 8 months. Lying when you deposited money into that secret account. Lying when you took out that life insurance policy. Lying on Mother's Day when I sent you that card and you transferred $50,000 to pay for my murder. I'm done listening to your lies, Michael." Officer Leonard moved forward with handcuffs. "Jessica Thomas, you're under arrest for attempted murder. You have the right to remain silent." She cuffed Jessica first. Read her rights in that flat, practiced voice police use. Jessica was sobbing now, full-body sobs that shook her shoulders. Then she stopped, looked up at me, and her face transformed. The tears stopped like someone had turned off a faucet. Her expression twisted into something ugly, something I'd never seen before. "You're a vindictive bitch," she screamed. Spit flew from her mouth. "You were never a real mother. Michael told me. You chose your company over him every single time, missed his childhood, made him feel worthless. You destroyed him. You deserve this. You deserve to die alone." I didn't flinch, didn't react, just stood there and let her words wash over me. Because part of me, a part I didn't want to acknowledge, wondered if she was right. Officer Rodriguez moved to Michael. "Turn around, hands behind your back." Michael didn't resist, didn't speak, just stared at the floor while Rodriguez cuffed him, read him his rights, advised him of the charges. As they led them both toward the front door, Michael stopped, turned his head, looked at me one last time. "I'm sorry," he whispered. His voice was broken, destroyed. I nodded, felt my throat tighten. "Me too." And then they were gone. The front door closed with a soft click that sounded like a gunshot in the silence. The plain-clothes officers left to process the scene at the station, to book Jessica and Michael, to begin the legal machinery that would grind them both into dust. Marcus stayed behind, stood in my dining room looking at me with something like concern. "You okay?" he asked. I looked around, at the champagne glasses half empty on the table, at the fake trust documents scattered across the wood, at my son's chair pushed back at an awkward angle, left exactly where it had fallen when he'd jumped up, at the flowers Jessica had brought, pink roses wilting in their vase. "No," I said honestly, "but I'm alive. Have you ever been blamed for someone else's cruelty? Have you ever had someone scream at you that you deserve the terrible thing they did to you, that your failures justified their violence? Because when Jessica screamed that I was never a real mother, that I deserved what they tried to do, part of me wondered if she was right. Was I so terrible that my son felt murder was justified? Do bad mothers deserve to die? I know that sounds crazy. I know it sounds like victim blaming, but in that moment, standing in my dining room with champagne and poison on the table, I believed it. I believed I'd driven my son to this, that my absence had created a murderer. How did you live with that? How did you silence that voice that says you deserved it? Marcus started cleaning up, bagging evidence, photographing the scene, moving through my house like it was a crime scene, which it was, which it had always been, really. Ever since Michael was born and I chose a board meeting over holding him, ever since I decided a company was more important than a son. If this moment broke your heart, if you felt even a fraction of what I felt standing in that empty house, knowing I'd just destroyed my only child to save myself, hit that like button, because this isn't over yet. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't sleep. Just sat in my living room with all the lights off, staring at the spot where Michael had stood when they cuffed him. The silence was different now, heavier. Before, the silence in my house was loneliness. Now it was grief. My phone kept buzzing on the coffee table. News alerts, text messages, calls from numbers I didn't recognize. I ignored all of it, just sat there in the dark, replaying the moment Jessica screamed that I deserved to die, that I was never a real mother, that I'd destroyed Michael, and I wondered if she was right. By morning, the story had spread like wildfire. Local news stations were camped outside my house. I peeked through the curtains and saw 3 vans with satellite dishes. Reporters doing stand-ups on my lawn. Austin Tech CEO's son arrested in alleged murder plot, the headlines read. Their mugshots appeared on every screen. Michael's face, pale, shocked, lost. Jessica's face, tear-streaked, mascara running, angry. I closed the curtains and sat back down in the dark. Friends from my corporate days reached out. Most were supportive, sending careful messages. "Teresa, I'm so sorry. If you need anything." Some were skeptical. "Are you sure Michael knew?" they'd ask, voices hushed like we were discussing something shameful. Maybe it was all Jessica. She seems like she could be manipulative. I wanted to believe that too. God, how I wanted to believe it. Wanted to believe my son was innocent, that he'd been seduced by a beautiful woman with a dark heart, that he was a victim, not a perpetrator. But I'd seen the bank records, the timeline, the forged insurance policy, the look in his eyes when Jessica confessed. He knew. He'd always known. My attorney, Patricia Gomez, came to the house 3 days after the arrest. I hadn't showered, hadn't changed clothes, hadn't eaten anything but crackers and coffee. She took one look at me and hugged me without saying a word. Then she spread papers out on my kitchen table, the same table where I used to help Michael with his homework back when he was in elementary school, back when he still wanted my help. "Teresa," she said gently, her dark eyes soft with concern, "the DA wants you to testify at the grand jury hearing. Are you prepared for that?" I wasn't sure. Testifying meant sitting in a room, looking at Michael through a screen or across a courtroom, and telling strangers how my son tried to have me killed. It meant saying the words out loud, making it official, real, permanent. There'd be no taking it back, no pretending it was a misunderstanding, no going back to the fantasy where my son loved me. "I don't know," I whispered. "I don't know if I can do it." Patricia squeezed my hand. "You don't have to decide now, but they'll need an answer by Friday." 4 days after the arrest, I got an unexpected visitor. The doorbell rang at 10 in the morning. I almost didn't answer, but something made me look through the peephole. A young Asian man stood on my doorstep, early 30s, wearing jeans and a polo shirt. He looked nervous, uncomfortable. I opened the door a crack. "Yes?" He looked up and I recognized him. Brian Campbell, Michael's college roommate. I hadn't seen him in years. "Mrs. Ronald," he said quietly, I need to tell you something. Can I come in?" We sat in my living room. Brian perched on the edge of the couch like he might need to run at any moment. He twisted his hands together, knuckles white. "About 6 months ago, Michael called me, late at night, 2, 3 in the morning. He was drunk, really drunk." Brian paused, took a shaky breath. "He started talking about you, about how you'd ruined his life, how you were never there, how he'd spent his whole childhood competing with your company for your attention, how every achievement he had was meaningless because you didn't notice." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "Go on," I said. Brian looked at the floor. Then he said something that scared me. He said, "What if she just wasn't here anymore? What if we could start over without her shadow?" I asked him what he meant. He laughed, said nothing, just drunk talk, just wondering what life would be like if Mom disappeared. Then he changed the subject. Brian finally looked up at me. I thought he was just venting, just drunk talk. I told him to sleep it off and call me in the morning, but he never did, and I should have known. I should have called you, warned you. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Ronald." After Brian left, I sat there for hours. The afternoon sun moved across my living room floor. Dust motes floated in the light, and I realized this wasn't just Jessica's plan. Michael had been thinking about this long before the digitalis, long before the bank accounts, long before he even met Jessica. He'd been fantasizing about a life without me for months, maybe years, maybe his entire adult life. The mother-shaped hole in his childhood had grown into a mother-shaped target. I went to Michael's childhood bedroom. I'd kept it exactly as he left it when he moved out at 22, baseball trophies on the shelf, dusty now, posters of bands he loved, Green Day, Blink-182, bands I'd never taken the time to listen to. Photos tacked to a corkboard. Us at Disneyland when he was 8, me in a ridiculous Mickey Mouse hat. His high school graduation, me in the audience on my phone. His college move-in day at UT Austin, me checking my watch because I had a meeting in 2 hours. I looked at those photos and tried to find the moment, the exact moment I lost him. But there wasn't one moment. It was 1,000 moments, 1,000 tiny abandonments that accumulated like poison in his blood. In his closet, behind old textbooks and a broken skateboard, I found an old journal, leather-bound, the kind I'd given him for his 13th birthday, thinking it might help him process the divorce. I shouldn't have read it. Knew I shouldn't. But I sat down on his bed and opened it anyway. Entry after entry about feeling invisible. "Mom missed my championship game today. Said it was an important client meeting. I scored the winning run, and she wasn't there to see it. Coach asked where my parents were. I said my dad lived in California, and my mom was busy. He looked at me like I was pathetic. Another entry dated 2 years later. I told Mom I got accepted to Stanford today. Full ride. She was on a conference call, said, "That's great, honey," without even looking at me. Didn't even ask what I'd be studying, just waved me away. I read every page, every hurt, every disappointment, every moment he needed me, and I chose work instead. Every birthday I forgot, every game I missed, every parent-teacher conference I skipped. By the time I finished, I was sobbing, great heaving sobs that shook my whole body. Because he was right. He was absolutely right. I hadn't been there. I'd given him everything except the one thing he actually needed, my time, my presence, my attention. I'd given him money and empty rooms, and a mother who was always somewhere else. But here's what I couldn't reconcile, sitting there in his childhood bedroom with his journal in my lap. Yes, I was a terrible mother. Yes, I failed him in fundamental ways. But did that justify murder? Did my absence give him the right to poison me? Did emotional neglect equal a death sentence? I didn't know anymore. Couldn't find the line between cause and effect, between reason and justification. Marcus came by that evening, found me still sitting in Michael's room, surrounded by old photos and baseball trophies and evidence of all my failures. "Teresa," he said quietly, sitting down beside me on the twin bed, "you need to understand something. Bad parenting doesn't justify murder. Millions of people have absent parents, neglectful parents, parents who fail them in every possible way. They don't become killers. They go to therapy. They work through it. They break the cycle. Michael made a choice. So did Jessica. That's on them, not you. I wanted to believe him. But if I'd been there..." He cut me off. "Stop. You can't go down that road. You'll drive yourself insane with what-ifs. What if you'd gone to his games? What if you'd worked less? What if you'd been the perfect mother? Maybe he'd still be planning to kill you. Maybe Jessica would have found a different weakness to exploit. Or maybe he'd be a doctor saving lives. You don't know. You can't know. All you can know is that attempted murder is a choice. And he chose it." The preliminary hearing was set for 2 weeks out. Patricia warned me it would be brutal. "Jessica's lawyer is going to paint you as a cold, neglectful mother who drove them to desperation," she said. "They'll put your parenting on trial. Dig up every missed event, every absence, every time you chose work over family. Michael's lawyer will claim he was manipulated by Jessica, that she preyed on his resentment. They're going to make you the villain, Teresa." I laughed bitterly. Heard how hollow it sounded. Maybe I am. Patricia suggested I attend a support group for family members of violent offenders. "It might help," she said, "talking to people who understand." I went once. Drove to a church basement in South Austin where 8 people sat in a circle of metal folding chairs. A woman named Marie, maybe 60, gray hair, kind eyes, held my hand while I told my story. "It's not your fault," she whispered when I finished. "You didn't make them do this. My daughter killed her husband. For years I thought I'd failed her. That if I'd been a better mother she wouldn't have become a murderer. But the therapist here helped me understand. We're all responsible for our own choices. You didn't put that poison in Jessica's hand. You didn't open that bank account. They did. But I wasn't sure I believed her. Here's what keeps me awake at night, what plays on repeat in my head until I want to scream, how much of this is my fault. If I'd been a better mother. If I'd gone to those baseball games, those parent-teacher conferences, those father-son camping trips after the divorce. Would Michael still be the man he became? Or are some people just broken, no matter how much love you give them? Was he doomed from the moment I chose my company over his childhood? Or would he have found another reason, another excuse, another path to murder? I genuinely don't know. Can't find the answer no matter how many times I replay his life in my head. Tell me what you think, because I need perspective I can't find on my own. I need someone to tell me if I created a monster, or if the monster was always there, just waiting for the right motivation. I spent that week in Michael's room, reading his journal over and over, looking at photos, trying to find the exact moment everything went wrong. Trying to understand how my little boy, the one who used to make me breakfast in bed on Mother's Day, burnt toast and runny eggs that I ate like it was a feast, became someone who could watch his wife pour poison into my drink. If this story is making you think about your own family, your own regrets, your own missed moments, your own children who might be growing up feeling invisible, Please share it. Maybe someone out there needs to hear this as much as I needed to tell it. Maybe there's a parent right now choosing work over a soccer game who needs to understand what that choice might cost. Maybe there's someone like me, years down the road, wondering when it all went wrong. Share this, please. Because if my failure can save someone else from making the same mistakes, then maybe it means something. The morning of the preliminary hearing, I put on my navy suit, the power suit I wore when I pitched to investors who wanted to lowball my company's valuation, the suit I wore when I fired executives who'd tried to undermine me. If I was going to face my son in court, I'd face him as the woman who survived him, as the woman who refused to die quietly. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror applying lipstick with steady hands, and wondered when I'd become someone who could do this, when survival had turned me into stone. Travis County Courthouse was packed. News vans lined the street. Photographers with long lenses camped on the steps. Reporters shouted questions as Patricia guided me through the side entrance, her hand firm on my elbow. "Teresa, do you regret turning in your son? Will you ask for leniency? Do you think they deserve the death penalty?" I kept my head down, didn't answer. Let Patricia push through the crowd while camera flashes turned the world white. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Pale wood paneling, fluorescent lights that buzzed faintly, cheap acoustic tiles on the ceiling. It looked more like a high school classroom than the place where my son's fate would be decided. Michael and Jessica sat at separate defense tables. Their lawyers had convinced the judge to try them separately, each hoping to throw the other under the bus. Michael wore an orange jumpsuit that hung loose on his frame. He'd lost weight, maybe 15-20 pounds. His face was gaunt, eyes hollow, hair longer than he usually kept it. When I walked in, Michael looked up. Our eyes met for the first time since the arrest, since he'd whispered "I'm sorry" as they led him away from my house. I tried to read his expression. Anger, remorse, fear, hatred? I couldn't tell. His face was a mask. Then he looked away first, stared at the table in front of him, and I felt something twist in my chest. Relief, maybe, that I didn't have to hold his gaze, that I didn't have to see whatever was behind his eyes. Jessica was brought in next through a side door. She'd clearly been crying, eyes puffy and red, face blotchy without makeup. Her lawyer, a sharp woman in a red blazer with severe black hair, whispered something in her ear. Jessica nodded, dabbing her eyes with a tissue, playing the victim, the manipulated wife, the woman who'd been coerced into poisoning her mother-in-law. I wondered if she believed her own performance. The assistant district attorney, James Rivera, stood up. Mid-40s, salt and pepper hair, expensive suit that said he wasn't a public defender. "Your Honor, the state will prove that Jessica Thomas and Michael Ronald engaged in a calculated, premeditated plot to murder Teresa Ronald for financial gain. We have forensic evidence, financial records, and video documentation of not one, but two separate poisoning attempts. This isn't a crime of passion. This is cold-blooded attempted murder." Jessica's lawyer stood next. "Your Honor, my client was in an abusive relationship. Michael Ronald manipulated her, threatened her, convinced her that his mother was a danger to their future and their safety. Jessica Thomas is a victim here, not a perpetrator. She was coerced into these actions by a man who exploited her love and trust." I almost laughed. Abusive relationship. Jessica, who'd poured poison into my drink twice while smiling. Jessica, who'd called me Mama T while planning my funeral. Michael's lawyer took a different approach. Older man, gray suit, tired eyes. Michael Ronald is guilty of one thing, loving the wrong woman. Jessica Thomas is a pharmaceutical sales representative with access to controlled substances and the knowledge to use them. She exploited Michael's complicated relationship with his mother, used his vulnerabilities and resentments to execute her own murderous plan. Michael is a victim of manipulation, not a perpetrator of violence. Then it was my turn. Teresa Ronald to the stand. I walked to the witness box on legs that felt like they might buckle. Placed my hand on the Bible. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?" "I do." My voice didn't shake. James Rivera approached with a kind smile. "Miss Ronald, can you tell the court about the evening of April 23rd at the restaurant downtown?" I told them everything. The celebration dinner. Michael and Jessica dancing. The security guard leaning over to warn me, the glass of orange juice sitting on the table. My voice stayed steady, clinical even, like I was presenting a business case. But my hands shook. I gripped the witness stand to keep them still, pressed my palms against the wood until they stopped trembling. Jessica's lawyer stood for cross-examination. "Ms. Ronald, isn't it true that you were an absentee mother? That you prioritized your company over your son for his entire life?" I took a breath. "Yes, that's true." She pressed on, sensing weakness. "Isn't it true you missed his high school graduation? His baseball championships? His college acceptance?" "Yes." "Isn't it possible that your neglect created such resentment in Michael that Jessica felt she had to protect him from you? That she saw you as a threat to his well-being?" I looked at Jessica, then at Michael, then back at the lawyer. "I failed my son in many ways. I was absent when he needed me present. I chose work over family. I made terrible mistakes as a mother." I paused. "But I never tried to kill him. That's the difference between a bad parent and a murderer. I hurt him through absence. They tried to hurt me through poison. Those aren't equivalent." The prosecution played the bathroom footage. The courtroom went silent as we all watched Jessica lock the door, pull the vial from her bra, pour it into my champagne glass, swirl it to mix, smile at herself in the mirror. Even her lawyer looked uncomfortable. Jessica sobbed quietly, her head in her hands, shoulders shaking. I watched Michael as the video played. His face was unreadable, stone. But when Jessica started crying, he reached toward her, an instinctive gesture, his hand moving before his brain could stop it, before his lawyer grabbed his arm and pulled it back. James Rivera presented the bank records next. The jury saw every transaction, every deposit into the Jessica Thomas account, every payment to Dmitry Kovac for $15,000, the forged life insurance policy with my forged signature. One juror, an older woman in the front row with gray hair and reading glasses, shook her head in disgust. Another juror, a young man in his 20s, looked like he might be sick. Michael's defense called character witnesses: his college professor who taught him software engineering, his boss at the tech startup where he worked, a childhood friend I vaguely remembered from birthday parties. They all painted the same picture. Michael was kind, gentle, thoughtful, wouldn't hurt a fly. But when James Rivera cross-examined them, asked if they'd spoken to Michael recently, they all admitted they hadn't. Not in months, not in years. They were testifying to who Michael used to be, not who he'd become. James Rivera stood before the jury for closing arguments. "This isn't a case about bad parenting. This is a case about greed, betrayal, and attempted murder. Teresa Ronald built a fortune through hard work and sacrifice. Her son and his wife decided they didn't want to wait for their inheritance, so they tried to take it, twice. If that security guard hadn't warned Teresa at the restaurant, she'd be dead right now. And these two would be living off her $50 million, spending her blood money on vacations and champagne." After 2 hours of deliberation, the judge ruled there was sufficient evidence for trial. Both Michael and Jessica would face full criminal trials. Bail remained denied, flight risk and danger to the victim. Trial dates were set for 3 months out. As I left through the back entrance, reporters swarmed anyway. Someone had leaked our exit route. "Teresa, how do you feel?" I stopped, looked at the cameras, at all those faces waiting for a soundbite, and said the only thing I could: "I feel like I've lost everything that mattered. But I'm still here, and I'll keep fighting to stay here." As they led Michael back to the holding cell, he called out, "Mom!" His voice cracked on the word. I turned. He looked broken, destroyed, 10 years older than his 33 years. "I'm sorry," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "For all of it. I'm so sorry." I didn't respond, couldn't respond, just watched as the guards took him away, his orange jumpsuit disappearing through the door. Michael said he was sorry. Part of me, the part that was still a mother, still remembered rocking him to sleep when he had nightmares. Wanted to run to him, hold him, tell him I forgave him, tell him we'd figure this out together. The other part remembered the digitalis, the bank accounts, the Mother's Day transaction, the forged life insurance policy, the smile on Jessica's face as she poured poison into my drink while he sat 20 feet away. Can you forgive someone who tried to kill you? Should you? I still don't have an answer. Some days I think forgiveness is possible. Other days I think it would be insanity. Forgiving someone for hurting you is one thing. Forgiving someone for trying to end your life is something else entirely. What would you do if your child, your own flesh and blood, looked at you with tears in their eyes and said, "I'm sorry after trying to murder you"? Could you forgive them? Would you want to? Patricia drove me home in silence. We didn't speak until she pulled into my driveway. "You did well today," she said quietly. "Testifying is never easy. Testifying against family is impossible, but you did it." I nodded, didn't trust my voice. Got out of the car and walked into my empty house, poured myself a glass of wine, sat at my kitchen table, and cried until I had nothing left. If you've stayed with me through this whole story, through every painful moment, every betrayal, every decision that tore me apart, please subscribe. I need to know this mattered, that my story mattered, that somewhere out there, someone understands why I did what I did, why I chose survival over motherhood, why I became the kind of woman who destroys her child to save herself. 3 months later, the trial began. 5 weeks that felt like 5 years. I attended every single day, sat in the same seat in the back row of the courtroom, watched as prosecutors dismantled Jessica's lies piece by piece, watched as they exposed Michael's complicity with bank records and testimony and evidence that buried him deeper with every passing hour. I barely ate, lost 12 pounds, survived on coffee and the grim determination to see this through to the end. They brought in Dmitry Kovac, the chemist who'd lost his license. He shuffled into the courtroom in an ill-fitting suit, avoiding eye contact with everyone. Under oath, he testified that Jessica had approached him 8 months ago, asked about untraceable poisons, cardiac glycosides that mimicked heart attacks. He'd sold her the digitalis for $15,000 cash. When James Rivera asked who'd paid him, Kovac pulled out bank records. Wire transfer from Michael Ronald's account, date-stamped, irrefutable. Michael's face went gray when the records were displayed on the screen. Jessica took the stand in her own defense, wore a conservative navy dress buttoned to her throat, no makeup, hair pulled back, trying to look innocent, victimized. She claimed she was terrified of me, said I'd threatened to cut Michael off financially if he didn't leave her, said I'd told her I'd destroy their lives if they stayed together. It was a lie. A desperate, transparent, pathetic lie. The jury saw through it. I could see it in their faces, the older woman in the front row rolling her eyes, the young man in the back crossing his arms, the middle-aged teacher shaking her head. Michael's lawyer advised him not to testify, told him it was too risky. But Michael insisted. He took the stand on day 18 of the trial, looked directly at the jury and told his version of events. Jessica manipulated him. He didn't know about the poison. He thought the money in the joint account was for their future, a house, maybe starting a family. He claimed ignorance, claimed innocence, played the fool who'd been led astray by a beautiful woman with a dark heart. But then James Rivera stood up for cross-examination. "Mr. Ronald, did you know about the life insurance policy taken out in your mother's name?" Michael hesitated. "Yes." "Did you sign the documents?" "Yes." "Did you know the signature on the policy application was forged?" Another hesitation, longer this time. "Yes," he admitted quietly, his voice barely audible. "I knew." The courtroom erupted, the judge banged her gavel, and I watched my son's defense crumble like sand. The jury deliberated for 2 days, 48 hours that stretched like 48 years. I didn't eat, barely slept, just sat in my hotel room staring at the ceiling, counting the cracks in the plaster, wondering what verdict would feel like justice, wondering if any verdict could make me feel whole again. Jessica was found guilty on all counts. 2 counts of attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, insurance fraud. The judge sentenced her to 25 years in state prison without the possibility of parole. Jessica screamed when the sentence was read, called me a witch, a vindictive monster, a heartless bitch who'd destroyed her life out of jealousy. Security had to restrain her as they led her away, her voice echoing through the courtroom until the door slammed shut. Michael's trial was different. The jury found him guilty of conspiracy to commit murder and accessory to attempted murder, but they acquitted him on the fraud charges, found that Jessica had been the primary manipulator, the mastermind, the one who'd exploited his resentment and turned it into murder. His sentence, 15 years in state prison. Eligibility for parole in 10. When the sentence was read, Michael didn't scream, didn't protest, just dropped his head and wept silently. At his sentencing hearing, the judge asked if he had anything to say. Michael stood on shaking legs, looked directly at me for the first time in weeks. "Mom, I know sorry isn't enough. I know I can't undo what I did. I know there's no going back from this." His voice broke. "But I want you to know, I loved you, I still love you, I didn't know how to live with feeling invisible my whole life, with feeling like I was competing with a company for my own mother's attention, with feeling like I didn't matter. Tears ran down his face. I chose wrong. I chose the worst possible way to deal with my pain, and I'll regret it every day for the rest of my life. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. The judge allowed me to give a victim impact statement. I stood at the podium on legs that barely held me, looked at my son. You were my whole world, I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. I know I didn't show it. I know I failed you in so many ways. I missed games and graduations and moments I can never get back. But you were the reason I built that company, to give you a future, to give you security, to make sure you'd never struggle the way I did. I paused, felt tears sliding down my cheeks. And you tried to take my life in exchange for money. You reduced my existence to a dollar amount. I forgive you for being angry with me. I even forgive you for resenting me. But I can't forgive you for choosing murder. Some lines, once crossed, can't be uncrossed. Some betrayals are too deep to heal. After sentencing, I was allowed a brief moment with Michael before he was transferred to state prison. We sat across from each other in a small gray room. A guard stood by the door, hands clasped behind his back. I meant what I said, Michael whispered. I'm sorry, for everything. I nodded, feeling hollow. I know, but sorry doesn't bring back the mother you had, and it doesn't bring back the son I lost. I stood to leave. He reached for my hand through the small opening in the security glass. Will you visit, please? I pulled my hand away. I don't know, Michael. Maybe someday, but not now. Not for a long time. A week after the sentencing, I met with Patricia to finalize my estate. We sat in her office with papers spread across her desk. I'm giving everything to Texas Children's Hospital, I told her. Every penny of the $50 million. Michael won't see a cent, neither will Jessica. Patricia looked at me carefully. Teresa, are you sure? This is permanent. Once you sign these documents, there's no changing your mind. I picked up the pen. I'm sure. I signed my name on every page, felt nothing, just emptiness where certainty should be. That night I went home to my empty house, found the last family photo we'd taken together, Michael, me, and Jessica at Christmas 3 years ago. We were standing in front of my fireplace, wearing matching ugly sweaters Jessica had bought as a joke. Michael had his arm around me. I was smiling. We looked happy. We looked like a real family, like people who loved each other. I stared at that photo for an hour, trying to remember what that happiness had felt like, trying to remember when the lies had started. Then I took it outside, placed it in my outdoor fireplace, lit a match, watched the photo curl and blacken at the edges, watched our smiling faces disappear into ash, watched the paper twist and fragment until there was nothing left but smoke. It felt like a funeral, like watching my family die a second time. But it also felt like release, like permission to finally let go of the fantasy that we'd ever been what that photo claimed we were. If this story has touched you, if you understand the pain of loving someone who hurt you, of surviving someone who wanted you dead, please like and share it. Someone out there needs to hear this. Someone is sitting in their own empty house wondering if survival is worth the cost. Tell them it is. Tell them I said so. People ask me if I regret turning them in, if I wish I'd just walked away that night at the restaurant, disappeared, started over somewhere new. The truth? I don't know. Some days I think I saved my own life, did the only thing I could do to survive. Other days I think I destroyed it. Because what's the point of surviving if everyone you love is gone? What's the point of $50 million if you spend it alone? What's the point of justice if it leaves you more broken than the crime did? If you were me, would you have visited Michael in prison? Would you have given him a second chance? Would you have found a way to forgive him? Or would you have walked away forever, burned the photos, signed the papers, and tried to build a life from the ashes? I think about this every single day, every morning when I wake up alone, every night when I go to bed in silence. Part of me wants to forgive him, wants to be the mother who loves unconditionally, who finds redemption in mercy. Part of me can't. Can't forget the digitalis, the bank accounts, the smile on Jessica's face as she poured poison into my drink while he sat there knowing. Tell me what you do, please. I need to know I'm not alone in this impossible choice. I need to know someone understands why I can't visit him, why I can't forgive, why survival sometimes means walking away from everyone you love. 6 months later, life moved on, slowly, painfully, like dragging yourself through quicksand. But it moved. I sold my house in Westlake Hills, Couldn't walk through those rooms anymore without seeing Michael's childhood bedroom, without hearing echoes of laughter that belonged to a family that no longer existed. Too many ghosts haunting every corner. I bought a smaller condo downtown, 2 bedrooms instead of 4, less space for memories to hide, started over. Again, for the 3rd time in my life. One morning my phone rang, unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Miss Ronald? This is Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Director of Texas Children's Hospital. We'd like to invite you to the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Teresa Ronald Pediatric Wing. Your donation has already changed lives. We want you to see what you've built." I sat there holding the phone, feeling nothing. I don't think that's a good idea. Dr. Mitchell's voice was gentle but persistent. These children need to meet you. They need to know that good can come from darkness. That redemption is possible. Please. I almost said no. The idea of being celebrated for money that came from such devastating pain felt obscene, like profiting from tragedy. But something in her voice, maybe hope, maybe desperation, made me agree. Okay. When? Next Tuesday, 10 a.m., we'll send a car. The day of the ceremony I wore my best suit, not the power suit, not the armor I'd worn to court, a softer one, charcoal gray with a silk blouse. I wanted to look worthy of the honor without looking like I was trying too hard. The hospital had transformed an entire floor. Bright colors everywhere, yellows and oranges and blues that hurt to look at after months of gray. Murals of stars and planets covering the walls, children laughing in playrooms. It was beautiful, heartbreaking. Life continuing despite everything. During the tour, a little girl approached me. Maybe 7 years old, wearing a princess dress over her hospital gown. Pink tulle and sparkles incongruous with the IV pole she dragged behind her. Bald from chemotherapy, skin pale. But her eyes were bright. "Are you Teresa?" she asked. Her voice was small but certain. I knelt down to her level. "I am. Thank you for my playroom," she said, gesturing to a room filled with books and toys and beanbag chairs. "It has all my favorite books, Harry Potter and Percy Jackson and everything." Then she hugged my legs, tight, like she'd known me forever, like I was someone worth loving. I knelt lower, looked into her bright eyes, and something inside me broke, not in a destructive way, in a necessary way, like ice cracking in spring, like something frozen finally thawing. I started crying, right there in the hospital hallway with doctors and nurses walking past. Emma, her name tag said Emma, patted my face with her small hand. "It's okay to be sad," she said with the wisdom of someone who'd seen too much suffering. "My mommy cries sometimes too. But then we read books together and it gets better." At the ceremony they asked me to give a speech. I stood at the podium looking at all those faces, parents holding sick children, doctors in white coats, nurses who'd seen miracles and tragedies in equal measure. I told them the truth. I built a fortune by working too much and loving too little. I lost my family because I didn't know how to balance success and presence. I chose board meetings over baseball games. I chose profits over people. This donation doesn't erase my mistakes. It can't bring back the years I lost with my son. But maybe it can help other mothers learn what I didn't. Time with your children is the only investment that truly matters. Money compounds, but so does absence. And the interest on absence is measured in resentment and pain and sometimes, my voice broke, sometimes in poison. After the ceremony, parents approached me. One mother, maybe 40, exhausted eyes, hands trembling, grabbed my hands. "My daughter is alive because of your donation. We couldn't afford her treatment. The insurance denied us. We were preparing to say goodbye. But now," she couldn't finish, just pulled me into a hug that felt like absolution. And in that embrace I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Purpose, not happiness, not peace, but purpose, a reason to keep breathing. A week later I received a letter, prison postmark, from Michael. I stared at it for an hour, almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity, or maybe hope, or maybe masochism, made me slice the envelope. His handwriting looked different, smaller, more careful. "Mom, I know you might not read this, but I need to write it anyway. I'm in therapy here. Court mandated it first. I resented it. Thought the therapist was another judge telling me what a failure I was. But she asked me a question that changed everything. What would you have done differently if you'd known your mother would die tomorrow? And I realized I would have told you I loved you. I would have forgiven you for the missed games. I would have chosen connection over resentment. I'm sorry it took attempted murder for me to learn that. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know you weren't a bad mother. You were a human mother. And I should have seen that sooner. Love, Michael. I read that letter 10 times. Cried through every reading. Each word felt like a small knife cutting away scar tissue. And then I did something surprising, I wrote back. Not to forgive, not to forget, but to acknowledge. Michael, thank you for your letter. I'm not ready to visit. I may never be. But I want you to know I loved you too. I still do. That's the terrible truth about being a mother. The love doesn't stop, even when it should, even when the person you love tried to kill you, even when loving them feels like betraying yourself. I hope prison teaches you what freedom couldn't. I hope you find peace. Maybe someday we'll find it together, but not today, not tomorrow, maybe never. But maybe, Teresa. I started volunteering at the hospital, every Tuesday, reading to kids in the pediatric wing. It wasn't about redemption. I knew I couldn't redeem myself through good deeds like checking boxes on a salvation worksheet. It was about showing up, being present, the thing I never learned to do with Michael. I met a boy named Daniel, 8 years old, terminal brain cancer. The doctors had given him 6 months. He loved astronomy. I brought him books about stars and black holes and the infinite expanding universe. We'd sit by the window and talk about supernovas and dark matter and whether aliens existed. One afternoon he asked, "Teresa, why are you so nice to us? You don't have to come here." I thought for a long moment, watched clouds drift past the window because I wasn't nice to the person who needed it most, and I'm trying to learn how. Daniel looked at me with eyes far too wise for 8 years. My mom says mistakes are just teachers in disguise. I smiled through the ache in my chest. Your mom is a smart woman. He nodded. Yeah, she's sad a lot. But she's here, that's what matters. And in that moment I understood. Showing up is everything, not being perfect, not having all the answers, just showing up, again and again. 1 year after the sentencing, I received notice that Michael was doing well in prison, model inmate, teaching other inmates to code, working toward a degree in social work. I didn't know how to feel about that, proud that he was changing, angry that it took prison to make him decent, sad that it took my near death for him to find purpose. All of it, none of it. Everything and nothing simultaneously. Emma went into remission. Her mother sent me a photo. Emma at her 8th birthday party, hair growing back in soft brown curls, smile brighter than the sun, surrounded by friends and balloons and a cake shaped like a unicorn. On the back, she'd written in careful handwriting, "Thank you for giving us tomorrow." I keep that photo on my nightstand. When I wake up in the middle of the night, and I still do, often, heart pounding from dreams of poison and courtrooms and Michael's face when they cuffed him, I look at Emma's smile, and I remind myself, I lost a family, but I found a purpose. I lost a son, but I saved a daughter, not mine by blood, but mine by choice. And maybe that's what family really is, not who you're born to, but who you choose to show up for, every single day, without expectation, without keeping score, just showing up. People ask me if I've healed. The truth? No, you don't heal from something like this. You don't get over your son trying to kill you. You don't move past watching your daughter-in-law pour poison into your drink while smiling. You just learn to carry it differently. Some days the weight is unbearable, crushing, suffocating, making every breath feel like drowning. Other days, it's just there, a permanent scar that reminds me I survived, that I'm still here, that they tried to erase me and failed. What's the most important lesson you're taking from my story? For me, it's this. Time is the only currency that matters. Not money, not success, not achievements or awards or $50 million acquisitions. Time with the people you love. Presence, attention, showing up for soccer games and parent-teacher conferences, and ordinary Tuesday dinners where nothing important is said, but everything important is felt. I learned that too late. Paid for that lesson with my son's soul. Please don't make my mistake. Tell me, who do you need to call today? Who do you need to show up for? What relationship are you neglecting because you're too busy building something that doesn't matter? Don't wait, because someday might never come. My name is Teresa Ronald. I'm 59 years old. I sold my company for $50 million. My son tried to kill me for it, and somehow, impossibly, I'm still here, still breathing, still trying. still hoping that tomorrow might be the day I finally understand what it all meant. If you've listened to my story, thank you. Thank you for bearing witness to my pain, my mistakes, and my survival. Because that's all any of us can do in the end, survive, and try to leave the world a little better than we found it. If my story moved you, please like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're struggling with family pain, betrayal, or guilt, know this, you're not alone. You never were. Thousands of us are walking around with scars that don't show, with stories we're afraid to tell, with shame we carry like stones in our pockets. But sharing those stories, speaking that pain out loud, that's how we survive. That's how we heal. Not completely, not perfectly, but enough. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for reminding me that my story, as painful as it is, mattered. You mattered. Take care of yourselves and each other.